And so my counsel would be, you need to be a mature business. You need to be generating revenue. You need to have a, to your way of saying, a path to profit.
Yeah.
Those things are important. So I want to dovetail on something Joey said, but then circle back to the invitation. So, yeah, it's going to be a different. It's a spectrum when it comes to what the responses are going to be, right? But I have found that depending on your approach with these different roles, your success rate can go up or down. And one of the things that I think is imperative and has served me well with some of the stuff that I do is, if you come into the equation, and to use terminology that you talk about, not assign homework, but come with something.
Mhm.
And that something is an education about what that customer, not only what they buy, but what they're trying to buy, what their motivations are, what their priorities are, what their mission is, what their vision is. If you understand that, you can communicate it effectively, and then you come to the table with something akin to, here are some things that I see that look like opportunity. Am I approaching this correctly from your perspective? And is this indeed opportunity? Because if it is, this is something that fits us well. And by taking that type of an approach, at minimum, you're differentiating yourself from most of the people in the way they approach. Going back to the amateur hour.
I mean, Zach, you have some unique skills, and you're well educated on what to ask and asking questions. But the average business owner is nowhere as near as this guy. I mean, I remember when you were calling the small business specialist. I mean, you had incredible conversations. But the average businessman, I mean, Derek is not going to be able to talk on that same level,
Right.
and get the contract
Not
specialist
Initially,
yeah. It's just
Which kind of segues into a question that I was going to have. In any stage of life, you have different tiers of acumen. So for those that in the government contracting world, William and Zach, the conversations that are being had right now are very very dense, right? And the what for those that are listening, especially for Derek, right? Can you break down the tiers of the individual that is looking to submit for an award? So you have I'm assuming your introductory, small, SBA. Then you have your, your mature, your growth, your mature, and then you have those, large enterprise such as Joe. But in your world, what key tiers do you see with regards to individuals looking for an award?
I'll go first, and then I'll give it to William. But I'm gonna speak to one of our collective clients that has a 15-year journey. Started out like Derek, a little bit more experience on the federal side, but started out as working for a prime contractor, then working for a small business, starting her own business. And she's in the DC metro area, and she happens to be an African-American female primarily in the construction and managed services space in construction. So she's a pioneer in that space in the federal market in a lot of ways. And one of the things that she taught us that I thought that resonated with me, I think both of us, was what she did from year 1 to year 5 was totally different than what she did from year 5 to year 10, and totally different what she did from year 10 to year 15. And my advice would be, especially early on in the process, this is the time and the opportunity where you have the ability to morph or align or change based on external factors. And I'll give you an example of what I mean. We met with a gentleman yesterday that had a very specific, this is what I want to do. And I said, okay, how much does the government buy of that? And he said, I don't know. That's not the right answer. So at this stage of your business, depending on, even if you're in a, let's say, professional services or consulting firm, that could also be administrative support. That could also be, there's a range of things that could be done. And my advice would be, at the earliest stages, the year 1 or the month 1 would be, do your due diligence and figure out the federal government's demand. Because if you know the demand and you know what the levels of competition are within that demand, you're able to at least control the things that you can control, which is you're going into a market that is more attractive and has more potential quicker. So that would be my advice: is do the research to determine demand and how you align with that demand before you make the decision about who or what you want to be.
Yeah.
And I'll let you speak.
I think my comment would piggyback those. When you say demand, I'm going to just flip it a little bit and just say the opportunities that are available to you. The individual company that's a solopreneur, someone starting out, one or two people. If you're trying to chase $10 million, if one is trying to chase $10 million contracts right out the gate, I think there's a place where you go and build your skill set first. Okay. Yeah. So you go, and I believe it's being an exceptional subcontractor. Okay. That's where I believe you can, if you follow I'm going to use the analogy of swimming. I think that's where you go and learn your stroke. Okay. You go be a subcontractor. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One, that prime is going to care that you're successful because you're on their contract. So wherever there may be holes in your maturity, you have an opportunity, you have someone that's aligned that wants to see you do well because they're doing well. They're going to be able to fill those gaps.
And their name's on the line for your
and
performance.
their name's on the line. Exactly. The second value proposition to that is when you are there, you get to see it in action, not just the person helping you, but you can sit back and observe all the things that are going on. You don't necessarily have to raise your hand and say, I need help, but you can just sit back, put your glasses on and just watch. But, oh, I see. That's how you do that. That's how you do that. That's how you do that. And then you can model that behavior, and then you can start pattern recognizing it in other places. So
it's almost mentorship by proxy, just by
being around. So that's why I think it's a valuable place to learn your stroke. Get your stroke down before you go compete. And then once you get your stroke down, then you can go dive in shark infested waters. But I can save myself.
Sure.
But if you're starting in shark infested waters, that's just lunch for the shark. So that would be my thoughts about the maturity. It's a journey, and I think there's a places. There's a saying is that people punch above their weight.
Yeah.
This is not the place
to do that.
To punch above your weight.
Because you're going to get punched.
Yeah. You're going to get punched. Yeah. This is not the place to punch above your weight. It's like stay in the weight category where you are, master the weight category, and then move up. You've built the muscles to then allow you to play at the next level.
I'd like to dovetail on I love the subcontracting idea for two other reasons, which is number one of the most valuable assets in government is past performance. This is a way to gain past performance without having to actually have responsibility on the contract. Mm-hmm. The second, going back to what Joey was talking about, if you're trying to reach out to contracting officers, it's going to be crickets for most cases. In fact, William teaches that to burgeoning contracting officers for a number of reasons, including protests and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. But prime contractors, especially large prime contractors, have a clause in their contract that says if it's over a certain dollar threshold, they have to include small business subcontractors. It's a requirement. It's in the federal acquisition regulation. So whereas you're reaching out to contracting officers, you may have a hard time. You may have to have a certain skill level or acumen for engaging them. In a lot of cases, the prime contractors will have online portals and they'll have places for you to register because they're constantly looking to not only for today's projects, but for tomorrow's projects. They have to constantly be preparing. And so you're going to get better engagement. You're going to get better communication in most cases.
Yeah.
So it seems to me that there are, of course, several weight classes. And that was an amazing terminology there, William. Now, looking at the featherweight weight class, what would you say would be the next weight class? So going from subcontractor to...
So probably small prime work. Again, I think the value proposition of the subcontract work is to learn actually how to run a business, to actually learn it.
And it's intriguing that he brings that up, because if you look at just common, a grad school 101, 9 out of 10 businesses fail within the first year. the 9 out of 10 of those businesses fail within the second year. The 9 out of 10 businesses fail within that third year. So the odds are never against you, always against you, right? So the intriguing thing, and what we've heard from yesterday's workshop, you had several individuals that just go to starting an LLC, first time company owner, and go straight towards trying to attack a contract, right?
Yeah.
So it's very intriguing that you brought that up, because in reality, you have the Small Business Administration, right? But the Small Business Administration, of course, how many new businesses get started a day? Anybody know that?
I don't know how many small businesses there are. It's somewhere between who you ask, 23 to 27 million.
Yeah, I think it's something in the tens of thousands every day.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
So if you think about that, looking at, I've been on the corporate governance side, for the last couple of years. So looking at the basic fundamentals of just having an operating agreement, right? We all know that, 9 out of 10 businesses fail. 9 out of 10 businesses don't even know what an operating agreement is, right? Which is intriguing. So it would be awesome if we understand that from the contracting side, that you're bombarded with emails, and 98% of the emails that they get bombarded by are just very simple individuals that don't really have a smorgasbord of credentials in their resumes. I like how you guys mentioned that, which was awesome, right? So, to vet that, we know that, and I heard about the 2-week rule. That was cool that you brought up, Zach. Usually they say, "Oh, just contact us in 2 weeks."
Yeah.
Just contact us in 2 weeks.
Let me jump in on this. There's a couple of things that you triggered in my head based on what you're saying. All right, number one, let's just get this on the table. You should have, with certain exceptions, a going commercial business before you try to become a federal contractor. There are exceptions. There are people that exit the military, start a business because they know that there's an acute demand that's not being served, and they're very successful, and that can happen. There's no doubt. But by and large, for most businesses, I very rarely run into a business that wants to, and this is the signal. You look at their registrations, you hear this term SAM. SAM stands for System for Award Management. This is the database where a business has to register in order to be eligible to do business with the government. Anytime I see business start date, August 1st, SAM registration date, August 8th, I'm like, all right, that's done.
Yeah.
That's that never works.
Yeah.
And what you end up seeing is there are those exceptions, but there's also, that goes back to this entitlement mentality where someone says, I'm going to start a business and I'm going to register for government contracts because I'm this, because I'm woman, because I'm minority, because I'm whatever. And so my counsel would be, you need to be a mature business. You need to be generating revenue. You need to have to your way of saying, a path to profit.
Yeah.
Those things are important.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to say is regarding the tiers and the weight classes, I'm going to talk about from a transaction type. It's called the federal contracting market. It's not the federal contracting market. It's the federal purchase market. The government buys in a lot of different ways. It's not all contracts. So one of the ways the government buys most frequently that is under the radar that most don't know is credit cards. They call them P cards, micro purchases. The federal government can buy from you up to $10,000 with a credit card. And I'm going to let William elaborate on it because he has a strategy around that if you care to. But the idea is by the time you reach contract, you should be mature enough to be able to pursue, compete for, and fulfill a contract. And there are stepping stones to that. So I'll let you jump in.
So I just want to, I wrote down some notes when you were here where we're talking about the kind of the business maturity thing. And I want to rattle this off to you, and I want to take this to a place that I think it will be a good place. Think about the things that a business owner has to be doing to enter the government marketplace. They actually have to be a business. Okay. They have to be focused on compliance. Okay. They have to have a marketing machine. They have to have an HR machine if it's just more than them. And they have to have a finance and pricing structure. what haven't we talked about? Actually delivering the government work.
Right. The thing.
Okay.
The product.
Those are all the things that have to be in place and
Supporting
operating
efforts.
and functioning before we even get to delivery. So when you talk about maturity, I wholeheartedly agree that there is a value to going into the commercial place for two reasons. The sales cycles and the invoicing just happen so much faster there. Okay, imagine in the invoicing and sales cycle in the federal government. You're in 4 months, 5 months. It's counted in months, not days or weeks. So those are some things to think about as a company is saying, "Ooh, I want to go start. I have my cage code. Why aren't the contracts showing up yet?" It's like, think of all the things you have to do, and we haven't even talked about delivery yet.
And you brought up a good point where you have to fund the fulfillment and the lifespan of that until you get paid.
Until you get paid,
you have to have the maturity to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And I think that William brought up a good point that as a business owner, you're not going to have the acumen of how to properly create your margins unless you're experienced in being able to execute in that space. So one of the challenges that you brought up yesterday was that you would have let's say an entrepreneur starts a company, let's say they win an award, and now they're like, hey, the first hour, hey, you're happy. Then as soon as after the first hour, you're like, oh my God, now we have to fulfill. And one of the things that I've learned is the milestone triggers. You have to meet certain milestone triggers to achieve the full amount of the award. So if it's $1 million award, on the other side, because of the misconception, the entrepreneur thinks that they get $1 million check. They're not aware that, hey, you have to fulfill XYZ before you get 200,000. And so you have tranches of milestones that have to get triggered. So now the entrepreneur has to put up his own capital to justify the requirements to help fulfill that contract, and they don't have the capital to do so. Right. So
financial capital and sometimes human capital.
You
need to be able to support the contract with the people.
I have a question from Mike, actually. Did you, in your journey in the PPE during the COVID years, did you see did the urgency of the demand change the relationship of how people were showing up, from a business perspective? Were they willing to circumvent or overlook, well, maybe you don't have this, but if you've got product, we'll take it? Did you see anything in the marketplace that drove unique behavior just because of the sense of urgency that was behind the requirements?
Two things on it. I would say yes, but then in the same breath, I'd say no, because I never knew if I was talking to the right person that actually made those decisions. So
okay, got it.
I wouldn't know. To kind of back what Hugo's saying, as far as having your own capital, like when I was the subcontractor and the contract, she held my hand and taught me everything I needed to know. Like you were saying, I was able to see the priceless points and touch points where I said, oh, I'm learning here and learning there. But I also had to fund it until I got the first.
Yep. You had to pay for the processors.
And it was exactly what Hugo said. It was tranches where, okay, you're going to do this and then you get this. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm funding this for 2 months. But, I had my processors running around the consulting firm, just busy all day, every day. I had to set up a whole bunch of infrastructure as far as software and appointment set and all these different things that I had to invest in.
And reporting and accountability.
Yeah.
But what separates Mike from the normal startup entrepreneur is Mike has had the acumen in several other industries to learn how to build, grow, and scale and operate. Most startup entrepreneurs do not have that acumen.
Right.
So because of that, Mike was able to maneuver through those dynamics. So it makes him an uncommon
solopreneur.
Solopreneur.
Yep.
Right.
And Hugo, it's even worse if you have just left a W-2 job and you have a W-2 mentality.
Yep.
And how do I know? That journey and metamorphosis.
It's a journey.
I had a W-2 since I was 17 years, 17. So it's like, okay, The eagle flew every 2 weeks, regardless. You just had to do your thing. The eagle flew. And as soon as you're responsible for somebody else's payroll and benefits, it's a world changer. It's a game changer. So
if I could speak to the question you asked Mike, because Hector and I had the opportunity to do some consulting during that period with businesses that were trying to do what Mike was doing.
Okay.
From the beginning of that journey to the end. And there were 2 seasons. And this is parts they don't tell you. They don't tell you this information. So the beginning of COVID, it was very much, do you have the product? Can you deliver? All right, we're gonna check boxes. We're gonna figure out a way because we need it. We need it more than we need the compliance.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you know some of this from your experience as well. But lots of agencies got burned.
Oh, absolutely. They bought bad stuff.
Yeah. They got burned. They
or didn't show up at all.
It didn't show up, or it was substandard. People died.
Didn't do what it was supposed to do. Yeah.
And then what happened was there was a point in time, and you actually did a whiteboard on this. So I remember on the 3M piece, but there was a point in time, there was a line that was drawn. It said, all right, we're going to strategically source this from competent, capable. Strategically sourcing means the government can. Lots of things are full and open competition, but when they do strategic sourcing, they say, okay, there's other extenuating circumstances that allow us to not do full and open competition. And so in this case, there was this shift where they weren't buying from Mike anymore, but nobody told Mike. This is so what you're doing is, even with a guy like me, I'm doing the data analysis. And I'm saying, oh, I think I told you, this attorney got, $1 million PPE contract. If this dude gets it, you can do it. So I wouldn't even be giving you bad advice at the time, because the shift happens and you don't know it. So you have to have a keen awareness of, so when you start seeing things in the news about agencies that bought bad stuff, bought a product, got burned, know that by the time you read that, the ground has already shifted.
Yeah, I had no clue. I was just aimlessly going at it and trusting whoever and signing all sorts of documents, thinking it was flying everywhere, and I was like, what in the world is going on? My wife was looking at me crazy. I'm like, we're gonna get this one, and no. It was dead end after dead end.
What's funny too, there's a saying called "be the purple cow," or try to be the, you might be familiar with that. But in that case, you had chickens and pigs trying to become a cow. And that's essentially what happened. Is like, so people that weren't even in the medical space, like, take your basic how running a business, your commercial side for 10 years, understanding the basics of it before you can become something that's completely different that people aren't used to seeing, that purple. So, but yeah, in this case, in the medical side, like, everyone was now a medical expert that can source PPE material, didn't matter what industry they came from. And that was the big thing that we just, we could see. We came across quite a few businesses that had that.
And we had once in a while, customers like, no, I actually have it. It's actually real.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I'll tell you, man. All the other guys it's not real, so you're in that boat. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
All right. So you mentioned something earlier that I wanted to circle back on, which was, you want them to invite you in terms of the relationship. Sometimes it's a lot better to get invited in than you trying to knock on the door.
And let me support that a little bit.
Okay.
Because one of the things that would be great for, solopreneurs or enterprise entrepreneurs is understanding the strategy behind a proactive strategy and a reactive strategy.
Yeah.
And if we apply the Pareto's principle, my assumption is that 80% of the entrepreneurs that want to get in this world of government contracting are reactive, where they just want to submit the documentation and sit back and pray.
Yeah.
And most of the conversations that I've heard from several of these subject matter experts are the opportunities that evolve around proactive engagement, right? About around just being top of mind, right? You just want to be that person that, let's say Nancy knows that there's an award and they have to fulfill within, let's say, the fiscal year, and they have about 2 hours to do so. That who can I send this award to so I could keep my budget, right? And then they look at their file and they're like, Johnny sent me Christmas, like a cookie, like a
Yeah.
Christmas like
Fruitcake.
like fruitcake.
Always under a certain amount of dollars, that's why.
And then, as long as you're Johnny sending fruitcake every quarter, sooner or later, you might get that call. But it looks to me where you have to have a reactive team and a proactive team
Yeah.
that's constantly
That's
working on the engagement.
So, all right, this is hunting, fishing, farming all day. So I want to hear that again. Hunting, fishing, and farming. Because that's the combination of the two, would you not say?
Yeah, I think that's fair. So I did a presentation probably a couple of years ago on this my foray into business development. And
This is how we met.
this is how we met. And my foray into business development as a young person that grew up on a 100-acre tobacco farm in Southern Virginia, hunting, fishing, and farming were things that were quite appealing to me. So I built a strategy, or at least I was doing some things, and then I put these activities into a strategy. Here were the couple of things that I was doing. Hunting, to Hugo's point, it's very opportunistic. If you think about hunting, there's no guarantee you're going to be successful hunting. You just have to be in the environment where targets are. Okay, that's all you can do. You can be prepared. You can have your weapon. You can have ammo. You can have food. You can have camo. You can have all the things. There's no guarantee. You can be out there all day, but nothing happens. But it's opportunistic. But what it does is it builds the muscles, being ready for something to come across your field of vision, and then you're ready to shoot on it. Builds your muscles for activity downstream. So
And that would be
that's hunting.
reacting to the thing coming
Very
across.
very reactive. Have high degrees of luck.
Yep.
In a hunting model. The fishing model is the cultivation practice, what I call the one-to-many. Okay. Think about a fish, someone's fishing, but think about it from a boat perspective. They're putting hundreds of hooks in the water. Okay, one to many. So what I was doing that fell into that category was webinars, speaking engagements. Anytime I had an opportunity to get in front of people, it was almost like clockwork that 10% of whatever number I was in front of, 10% of them said, "Wow, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. Can you come do this for me?" So that's why I call it fishing, is because my job, if I know that any group I get into, the network effect says 10% of them are going to want to invite me to come do something else, then my job is just to get in front of the biggest people, in front of the biggest groups as possible. I think my largest was I did a webinar during COVID that had 675 people on it. Okay. And it was like clockwork. I started, my phone started going off, LinkedIn messages, connect. So that is fishing. And then the farming is simply all the connections that happen during your hunting and your fishing. You have to spend time and cultivate them. Think about them as planting seeds, but you have to tend them. So it's relationship based. That's relationship based activity. So it's 3 levels of activity at 3 different times with 3 different levels of energies surrounding them. But it's proactive activity. That's your hunting. Your longer term intentional one-to-many. That's your fishing, and then your longer term cultivating strategy is once you make those connections, you have to do a virtual CRM. You got to put them in there, and you got to work them. So that's a strategy.